Okay, so I'm going to give this a try. So for the DBR, we have to collect a lot of data, and some of the data we collect is about public breaches. And one of the ways we get that is we keep a record of breaches that are publicly disclosed, and then we code them. And coding for us is turning it from a news article or something into structured data. And so we code public breaches into our public data set VCDB, and it's something that we have to do a lot of. And so I'm going to try and see if I can do it streaming to kind of help other people see a little bit about what we do for the DBIR, as well as get an idea of kind of how we do this, and just provide some examples for other people that contribute to the DBIR as well. Um, Coding breaches for VCDB is easy, and it's something that people can contribute to. The VCDB data set is open and is not just used by the DBIR team, but it's used by academic researchers as well and such. And so certainly it helps everyone out. So let's give this one a start. We keep all of our potential issues as issues in GitHub, and there's normally a couple labels and a breach or something linked to whatever happened. And so we'll take a look at this one. So Kingston Medical Research Center reported a security incident on a website, shut down for 2 months. Yada, yada, yada. Incident did not impact all customers. And so, let's see, website resides in an isolated computer, was not connected to other systems. So was this just a vulnerability, like the data was exposed? Or did anyone actually access it? Let's see. And so here's our record of the breach, and then here is the notice for the breach. Websites were removed from public access and taken down, values confidentiality, yada, yada, yada. Only a subset of individuals. See, I'm not sure. Let's look at some of the other links, because I'm not sure that a breach occurred. So for a breach to have occurred for the DBIR, data must be disclosed to an unauthorized party. And so if there's no record of anyone actually accessing the data, then they were vulnerable, but it wouldn't be a breach, and so or even necessarily an incident, because nothing actually happened. So let's see what we have here in the other articles. Website shut down since 8 April for possible security breach. Employees strict internal protocols. Website is public. It is not, since our website is public, it's not subject to the same protocols. Okay. It's not an in-house medical record system that is highly secured. Of course, yeah, the one that was insecure was clearly not the highly secured ones. Promise those are all secure. But was there any record that anyone actually downloaded the data? Well, time frame, including customers' data, financial were not affected. So I'm not sure that this is actually a breach. And so I don't see anything in here saying that the data was downloaded or any malice happened. There was no action, and there was no attribute. And so I'm actually going to go back in and mark this one as not a breach, I think. Unless someone disagrees. And so we can do that. We've got numbers for it, or we've got tags for it. Where is that? It's like a false positive tag in here somewhere. Not a bad URL. Hall of Fame. I'm going to say, so the options are either invalid or needs details. Certainly additional details might tell us it's a breach, but I think we're unlikely to ever see those, because the reality is you can't prove a negative. So I'm going to actually mark this as invalid, I think. And so give that a tag, and then I'm just going to close down the issue. So, and we can open these back up if need be, which we sometimes do. And the DBR team continuously reviews their data. Hi, Seotok, how to pronounce it? How you doing today? So we review our Seotok. Okay, cool. So we review these regularly within the team, and we discuss things that we're not sure about. And so there's nothing that's ever like necessarily finalized. We can always go back and improve. But for now, I'm going to close this one down as invalid, and we'll go back to my list and see what the next thing on my list is. So refresh it. Show reports, data breach, hacker gain access to email accounts. This one's I'm going to take this one. So, excuse me. We'll open these up and see what this one is. 11 million photos. Exciting. Oh, that was the old one. Okay. VPN Miners research team discovered that they experienced a huge data breach. Now this is interesting because is it that they discovered that the data was breached, or that they discovered the data and then downloaded it themselves, which technically for us qualifies as a breach because an unauthorized party accessed the data, but you know, it wasn't necessarily a breach until the researchers actually downloaded the data. It would have just been vulnerable, similar to the last one. In this case, we know that the researchers at least downloaded the data. We discovered the leak in the database, so this makes me think that they just found exposed data, and they downloaded some of it because they've got screenshots of it. And so we can kind of go from there. And so let's get us started. I'm the analyst. So security incident, it's confirmed. We want to capture the GitHub issue number so that we have traceability between the data sets. And then we'll capture these references so that we know. And we also use the references a lot of times to deduplicate, because there's a lot of organizations which try to capture publicly disclosed data breaches, and several of them report to the DBIR. Excuse me. And so sometimes we have to go back and deduplicate the data. So summary, we'll say researchers discovered exposed photo database. So confidence is relatively high since this is published. So now the timeline. This happened in May 14 of, you know what, it killed them to put years on here. So 2019. So the incident, 2019, May, and then the 14th. Compromised, I think, we'll say minutes, because the researchers found it, and then, I mean, so I'm going to say unknown, because we really don't know how long it took them to find the database. Exfiltration, though, was clearly minutes, because once they found it, they downloaded some stuff from it. Discovery, they reported it a day later to the victim, so we'll go days. Actually, we'll go hours and 24. We have a coding standard where when you're choosing hours or days, it has to be closer to 2 of the unit to choose the higher unit. So if this was like, if we knew that there was 2 days, so if it was disclosed to Theta 360 on May 16th, we would put days. But since it seems to be within 1 day, we're going to put hours. But I'm going to put 24 as the number of hours, since we know it's between 2 days. And that'll get us close. And of course, this is all about getting, rough data in. We get more granular and can analyze at whichever level we need. And so 24 hours is 1 day, but the problem is the units we use here are all plural instead of singular. Um, and so, and it's something that predates me, but when it comes back and we talk about this in the DBR, we're going to say something like, um, X% of breaches were discovered in days, or maybe days or less. Yay for pop-ups. And so how will people interpret that in the report is ultimately what it kind of comes down to. And so I would suspect that people would interpret days as more than a single day. And so in that case, we'll put hours, but if we ever go back and enumerate detailed links, we'll put the actual value here. And so that's kind of how we do it. And there's a lot of this kind of institutional knowledge within the DBR about how we code different things and how to represent them. And we're working hard to try to share that or try to get it documented so that other people can see it. And I'll actually show you an example of that here in a bit. So we'll close these down. Discovery, we got, and then containment. They closed it a day later. So 24. Then notification. That's a good question. Did Theta 360 notify anyone, or is it just like the news article that VPN Mentor? In fact, we could probably use, if we knew the publishing date of this page, we could probably use it as the notification. That's why we always love it in the DBR when you put dates on your pages. My guess is, yeah, it could be in the page source, but I also don't want to like dig around too far for it. So June 1st is kind of exposure. So we'll say that, this is probably the thing. They probably gave them a little bit of leeway time. So May to June 1st is like 2 weeks, which seems reasonable for a disclosure period. And so we'll put June 1st here. And it won't affect a whole lot. Let's see, 6.1. Because we don't do a lot of enumeration off the notification, but we do try to capture it because in some cases we want to know about, how organizations are notifying people of breaches. So there we go. We've got notification and we've got it down to, we can be pretty confident that we've got it down to like the day and pretty close on the month, or down to the year, pretty close on the month. So now gets the fun stuff. So the victim. The victim is Theta 360. And so the easiest one, we need how big they are. So does it tell us gallery, Rico Theta? And really, are they? We don't want to go look at who they are because they may be a subset of Ricoh, and if that's the case, we should be using Ricoh's size as an organization. So is there an about the company here? Topic, support, buy, solutions. Oh, come on. Or maybe they just build these really nice 360 cameras, which I wouldn't disagree with. Like, that's one of the things for the DBR, like not this year's, but 2 years ago, we created a puzzle challenge that had a bunch of 360 photos I took all over and linked together to form the puzzle challenge. It's actually really cool. So global, about the site, product. Yeah, I kind of think that's a product developed by Ricoh. Yeah, because Ricoh at the bottom. So maybe Ricoh's size. So this is just like the product. Ricoh employees. I misspelled Ricoh, didn't I? Yeah. Wrong Ricoh. So Ricoh, and Ricoh being a big company, there's always a lot more data on them. Our employees, about 100,000. Let's give that a try. And so we'll set this to, do you think that they've grown 2,000 employees in the last year? I'll say this. This is probably okay. This qualifies as big. So 1,001 or more are big companies, and 1,000 and less are small companies, and that's ultimately we do most of our talking about. So, and then we need to know the NICS code because we need to know the industry. So NICS. We got asked by an internal team once how we found like the NICS codes and everything for the DBIR, and they were not amused when we said we just Googled them. But it works. So we got a NICS code for it, and we can look up the NICS code. So this is 541511. Far Smarter Bids has a good list of NICS codes, so we can look up what the NICS code is. 541511. 541. Then where's fives? 511. Computer systems design and related services. Seems fair. Programming services. Hey, we can live with that. So industry codes are all very historic, and so they've come out of manufacturing and transportation and things like that, and they don't do a good job of capturing kind of technology. In fact, this is something we run into a lot in the DBR, particularly with non-incident data sets, is the industries that we get tagged in non-incident sets are tagged with things like technology. But the problem is technology isn't a standard industry in any standard industry standard list, whether SIC codes or NICS codes or whatever. And so it really needs to fall under manufacturing or programming or something else. And it actually becomes an interesting thing to try to code these things correctly when it's a technology company. And so they are located in, well, they had one website affected. And they were located in Japan, I believe. Tag Japan. And then we try to capture the regions of the world. That should probably be probably East Asia, but I just want to double check. And so we'll go over to UN409 and East Asian. Does it include Japan? It does include Japan. And so we concatenate two parts of the region together. The major region, which in this case is Asia, is 142. And then the subregion is 030. And we concatenate them together to get the region code. And then if we need to get more detailed, we'll split it out, or we'll just search on the first three. And that's just kind of a historic process. And we can skip the state. We don't know it. We a lot of times only know the state for US types breaches. So let's go, and there's no secondary victims, so we can leave that. And so what was the action? And this is where we can go back and talk about kind of coding style. We're trying to start capturing coding style in the VERIS repo. And I just dumped this one in here really quick as an example. This is how we generally would code something like a cloud service. The action, in this case, is going to be an error of misconfiguration. So we'll go down and find that. Oh, that's misuse. We want error misconfiguration. And we could go back and look at this to make sure that's true. Discover the leak database through our web mapping project, which is bolded but not a link. Examine the database, made the internet safer, and all that stuff. So basically it looks like they, and this is being JSON, makes me think that maybe they found an open MongoDB database that was exposed to the internet. So go back and look. The vector, in this case it's listed as unknown. So do we know whether it was technology, a process, personnel, carelessness? We really don't. Like, unless there's more information, for an error, we don't know what it was. We'll know what the asset was, and it's really listed, because they keep saying database, I'm going to put database under asset. But the vector for the error itself is not necessarily known, and that's consistent with what we've done in the past. So now we've got the action, and now the actor. The actor is internal, and because this was the configuration of an IT asset, we're going to mark the actor as a system administrator, so whoever runs that database. And there is no motive. It was unintentional. They didn't mean to do this. They fixed it as soon as they knew about it. And we need to have an NA for job change, but for now we're just going to leave it empty. So we can close down the actor, and now the asset. And it looks like the S stands for server. So we're going to go to server database, and there's a couple in here. U is user device, T is terminal, E is embedded, N is network, P is person, and so in a social attack, the person is the asset compromised. So if you get like a phishing email and you click the link, you as a person are compromised. And that's how we can track things like for the DVR this year, executives being phished or being socially engineered. We also track media, so disks and papers and stuff. In this case, we're going to look at server. Where was it? Server, database. I think it was I would guess a MongoDB database. Do they say? They don't say there. And I'm sure that the company, my guess is that since these were the guys that found it, they're more likely to have published more information. The company itself is unlikely to disclose a whole lot other than, they're aware of the problem and they fixed it now and things are great. So server 1 and location. I don't think we know the location. We know the company is located in Japan, but it's not particularly clear that this is like a Japanese server. Cloud. And this is another thing. Do we really know whether this was a cloud server or hosted in their own environment? Being a NoSQL server, it could really be either. And so, I don't know that we know whether this was a cloud asset or not. It would take more detail to be able to figure that out. And that's really common in the DVR. Like even something like this, like we can get a lot of good data about it. But some of the things we may want to know, such as, was this a misconfiguration of a cloud asset, which happens particularly often? Or was this the misconfiguration of an on-prem database server that was just exposed to the internet? It's not particularly clear. We just don't know. So we'll close down assets because we've filled that in. Oh, I forgot total assets. Yeah, one total asset. You want to add up the different assets to get total asset. So attribute, confidentiality, data was disclosed. Yes, because the researchers got the data. Total data. Does it say how many records were in this database? Yes, it had a number of 11 million photos. So variety would be personal data, amount 11,000 million. Total amount 11 million. And if we had if we disclosed personal data and medical data and credit card numbers all in the same record, even if we had 11 million of each, because each record contained all three, we'd just put 11 million. We wouldn't add and get 33 million. Also, we generally only code the things that are the most detailed version. So if you have medical data, you don't also code that personal data was lost, because medical data just inherently contains personal data. So it was customer data, stored. Data wasn't abused. The researchers just looked at it. And we don't really have an availability change or an integrity change. The researchers didn't change anything about the system. So was it targeted? It was opportunistic because we know that it wasn't let's see, because we know that they identified it through the scanning tool. Their web mapping project, they didn't target this organization. To be targeted, you need to have, you can kind of think about it in the criminal terms, like means, motive, and opportunity. Here, the motive was not specific to this organization. It covered all organizations. We know it wasn't encrypted on the download, but was it encrypted, because we marked it as stored, was it encrypted in storage? And we really don't know that. The database may have been encrypted, but the interface was able to decrypt it to share it because they had the web interface running to the database, or the MongoDB or whatever NoSQL database they were using. Discovery method, external unrelated third party, and that's consistent with kind of our example over here. We had admin, we marked database, unrelated third party. In this case, oh, that's actually a good point, and this is why we want to have examples of coding styles, because I made a bit of a mistake. This should be not applicable because I'm coding it. If the actor is the internal person, then it was an error. Now, if the actor were the external person, then it would be opportunistic. But because the actor is the internal person, they didn't target anything. The researchers targeted opportunistically, not directly. So we'll code that as NA. Code external discovery. Value chain is something new we're trying to capture, and it really doesn't apply here. It applies for like more malicious breaches. And so something like if you had ransomware, if the attacker, you want to know, did the attacker have to develop their own software? Did they buy it? Did they have to did they use any services to, say, encode the malware as such, make it able to avoid antivirus? How'd they pick their targets? Did they buy an email list from someone or have another way of targeting? Did they use a service to distribute it, or did they distribute it themselves? And on the cash out side, did they you can't buy a Maserati with Bitcoin. I don't think you can buy a Maserati with Bitcoin. I don't do a lot of Maserati shopping. I don't know. But more than likely they had to cash it out into something hard cash. And so how did they turn their Bitcoin from the ransomware into cash? Or did they launder the Bitcoin? Did they put it through a Bitcoin tumbler of some sort to make it harder to track? We'd like to know those things. And so we've put them into the schema, but a lot of times we don't know them. And for this breach, which involved just a simple error, none of it really applies. And so we're going to skip it and go down. Impact, no real impact. The company closed the hole, so we'll put, insignificant. They had to admit that the breach occurred, and that's about it. And then finally, we'll look at the plus section. There's some extra things here. We don't know about anti-forensic stuff. Attack difficulty. I don't know. I'd say attack difficulty. We'll just put low. Created and modified get filled in automatically. So the action, and this was really a one-step breach. Well, yeah. There's an error, an internal actor. The asset was a server, and confidentiality was exposed, and that was it. That was the whole sum of the breach. We don't know their security maturity or what corrective actions they've taken. So we'll mark this validated and save it. And it's a good idea. We do our best with this web app that we're using to try to be resilient against loss. We store this data as a internal variable in the browser so that even if you reset your page or do something, it won't go away. But it's always a good idea to copy it over to a third-party program. This is valid DBIR VERIS JSON, and so we're going to copy it into just a text file, just as kind of a backup copy. And so with that, we've coded the entire breach. And here in a bit, I can dump these out here. And so with that, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will be back in a minute.